Max, do you think Galley was lacking as an end boss? Like for us, it wasn't lacking in strategy because like that's basically what the whole fight was, but in difficulty, oh yeah. Like bro, let's look at the last phase of this fight. Let me give you an example of like where the fight just isn't punishing enough. So P1 honestly is like a pretty good phase for an end boss, right? Like they made these technicians giga technicians with a lot more HP. The way you have to deal with this with like the permanent mine mechanic, and if you die to any mechanic, basically you just kill the whole raid. Bro, if fire mages didn't exist, that would have wiped you a lot. You know, if I guess the rest of the boss was trying to kill you a lot. These soaks are pretty easy. The movement, this suppression, one thing about the fight that just seems like, it almost seems like a heroic mechanic. You guys know in heroic, like this animation isn't really accurate, and like you need to actually be way farther than this to not basically get one shot. Bro, in Mythic, the fall off damage is like, it stops at the actual, at the thing, you know? It's like no damage. These fire circles don't kill you if you get hit. It's just like normal level of end boss punishment wasn't there. A couple soothes here, no big deal. A couple soaks. You know, pretty easy to split this soak. We ended up with this strat. There's like a bunch of different fun, creative ways to like do this healing absorb, which I found pretty fun to think about. The bomb mechanic was really cool. The charging of the bombs was really cool. Like honestly, this phase is just really cool. This is just a really cool, honestly, like really good P1. This is a really well-made P1. Not talking about difficulty, just design. Like really cool. But it's just not very punishing. Like it just didn't really try to kill you. I don't know. Like everything was really like, dude, is this as many blazes as you got on heroic? Isn't it the same thing? So how this blaze work is it's basically just an exact perfect like there's like it's northeast southwest or northeast southwest, and then also the inner cardinals, and then I think there's like an extra 2 lines, and then it just breaks it up randomly between 4 people. Really cool mechanic. But on heroic, this is a mythic boss. On heroic it does this. Why does it not do double the amount of this? Okay, maybe it's just P1. Okay, cool. Maybe the thing about this fight is most of it's a secret phase. I mean, honestly, I think the reason the boss ended up like this is just because this is the first time they've tried to create an entire boss that wasn't in the dungeon journal, and they were just erring on the side of caution after sticks or something. That's like the only thing that makes sense. Because you can't even say it's because, oh, they didn't test it. They don't test any end bosses and they don't look like this, right? It's probably just they just put too much emphasis on the fact that it was like a secret phase or whatever. Okay, so now you're like getting into P2. They made it so when you dunk these things over here, you have to like be in the air. You have to do it with like a grip or like another way. Okay, that was like a interesting thought. All right, P2. The first time we see this, I'm like, yo, they cooked. You know? I'm thinking World in Flames. The barrage hits, there's 3 zones. The barrage hits the middle. The barrage hits the end. And then it would go like, and it would be faster, and it would alternate, and you had to like do a dance between the lightning and in front of the boss, and like, you know, like something like that. This phase could have been really hard. It looks fucking sick, dude. Holy shit, it looks sick. It's just not very punishing, right? It's like really easy to do. These things have to be kicked. Their second cast is unkickable, and then it will one-shot the person. I don't know, you just kill them. And then now this is like the phase that is completely, none of this stuff is in the dungeon journal. Everything that happens here. You split the raid up in half. But like how I did this was this, right? So I just split up our raid. You only needed 5 people to soak this, right? So I had, you know, all the people with the bomb debuff over here never getting hit by anything, even though they're mages and probably could have soaked all of it, but just for the sake of consistent progression, I had a nice even spread. But the thing is, spreading out these people for this mechanic naturally spread them out for everything. Frontal in the last quadrant was the exact same thing, right? Where you naturally are for your spreads is also naturally where you want to be spread for Blaze. It's how you want to be spread for the spread circles coming out, you know? We got the soaks, right? Like, it's just really easy to batter blast. Bro, we were thinking about doing some crazy weak aura for this. We were like, dude, what's the potential best like looking thing to spread? You know, like one we came up with was like, you know, you could just have everyone play in the front, send them all to the back, because you can melee from like the whole platform. You can have this whole playable space in this quadrant. None of this mattered. You could just kind of put them anywhere really and play the game, you know? Yeah, bro. It was just really simple. But like, let's look at what they could have done. Let me show you what like a mythic version of this boss could have been. So number one, you don't have a lot of actual space in this fight. Okay, so they do in in P2. Let's not even talk about P3. In P2, they just take away half your room, right? Okay, so you now only have this part of the room to play in. So the boss, when it does suppression, isn't even some shit. Like the boss, you keep the boss here. The boss's suppression is like maybe this wide? Maybe that? So like melee can just easily leave the boss and go here. Ranged don't have to think at all, and they're just super far away. Bro, so let's just talk about the suppression mechanic. What is suppression? This thing. So it's right here. So the boss does this like little circle thing right now. What it does is the big circle goes off. That's going to like kill you in 4 seconds if you're in that animation. And then suppression happens, which just drops fire circles on most people in the raid. And that will basically kill you if you get hit. But you just kind of move away from it, you know? They could have made that crazy. A normal mythic end boss, bro, that thing's this big or something, or way bigger. So you have to do something like in 2 quadrants where maybe you actually want to play it in the corner so you have like more playable space. And when you only have 1 quadrant, you know, you would have to tank it like in the corner and then have barely any room. And to get to that spot, you'd have to cross over multiple lightning lines. And it's like really difficult movement and it's really punishing. Nope, it's fucking this big. You know what I mean? It's just easy. It's like a heroic mechanic. Another mechanic, the soak. They added a soak mechanic in this fight. So it happened right before this. It only needs to be soaked by 5 people, and then there's a healing absorb. But it only happens like 6 or 7 times the entire fight, from 50 to 0. Bro, you know what you could have done? You know, and it wouldn't have even been unfair. You could have had the boss here, and you would have needed a group of 5 people soaking. What's an easier way to notate this, right? You would have had a group of 5 people basically soaking here, 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 and here. And the boss is machine gunning 4 of these soaks in 10 seconds. In 10 seconds, and you have to be naturally spread from each other and within your own group in a 10-second window to satisfy this mechanic, or you wipe. That's not even like an egregious end boss mechanic. That sounds like it's playable. So like that's a thing. That's just not real. The bomb mechanic is kind of interesting, right? It's like Fire Act kind of, where you like if you have a seed you can't die, but they basically just make 4 people the entire fight be unable to die. But the thing is the fight wasn't trying to kill you. And even if you could, mages are unkillable. They have more defensives than every class. They have a cheat death, and they can just blink over. Oh, there's a mechanic on me, blink. And then no mechanics happen again for 15 seconds, you know? Like, they're not going to die. Look, this looks difficult, but why is there a heroic amount of blazes? Look at this spread. Okay. Bro, you could put this on everyone in the raid, and it would have added like 10 pulls to the boss at most. Range are like barely moving. The spread circles. I mean, honestly, this was probably fine. Like, it was pretty punishing in the last phase. But, like, okay, so then you do all this, right? Okay, cool. So you have double the amount of room to deal with it. We've seen P2. This is P2. All right, cool. Let's go to the other secret phase of this fight. There's 2 phases of this fight that we've never seen. All right, cool. So now they've made us destroy this last coil. All right, so we're forced to now go to the single side of the room. All right, everybody get there. By the way, you don't have to be there right away. This thing doesn't do damage for 8 seconds. THD doesn't even have to set himself on fire and run over here real fast. He could just walk natty and he's here. Now, you just do everything you just did, but you just do it in a smaller space, but nothing's punishing enough to have that matter. The second intermission, oh, there's 5 prongs here. I don't know if a lot of people notice that instead of 3. That's like their way of cooking this up. There's an extra kick ad that has to die. They say DKs have a raid buff, but they just make every ad on this boss drop directly on top of the boss for free cleave. I mean, second pull ever in P3. I mean, just kill it. First time seeing it, you know? Crazy. Like, the fight looked cool. It had a lot of cool elements. You know what actually my theory is? Do you guys know when Blizzard... Do you know when Blizzard creates raid bosses? They don't create mythic bosses and then make them heroic and normal. They don't create normal bosses and make them heroic and mythic. They create heroic bosses. When they make a boss initially, they create a heroic encounter, what's intended to be heroic, and then they buff it up for mythic and they nerf it for normal. That is the way they design fights. But because this fight was like not in heroic, it's almost like it makes sense why it kind of feels like a little bit harder heroic fight, because it was something that was incepted and then not buffed to a mythic level. So it never went through the process of being buffed to mythic. It was created for mythic, which is something they do intentionally try to not do. I'm kind of just throwing shit against the wall here, but like I'm just trying to think how something like this happened. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wish this boss was harder so we could have won by way more, right? But I will say, this boss will be a lot like Lihivam, though. The boss in Sepulchre. Here's what I mean by that. When most people think of Lihivam, they don't really think of it at all. It's just this fight that exists, and you have this strat for it, and it's like kind of easy to understand. But like, this fight gives you so much creativity. I actually talked about this with Dash on the broadcast yesterday. You have to choose which one of these ads you kill, which one of these prototypes you kill. Blizzard didn't even intend for you to be able to kill 2 in the same set like we are right here. We literally just did that, and we were like, we didn't think that was possible, and then they were going to talk about nerfing it, and then they were like, okay, well, you guys are already doing it, so we can't nerf it, right? So we had to do this. There was so much creativity. We did so many different like strategies on this fight, and that was so fun to figure out. We came up with like rooting these ads away to like make it more feasible, and all that problem solving was fun for all of us. Do you know what Dash was talking about? He was like, yeah, Livam wasn't fun for me because it was just this boss where we just did these things and it was easy, and I just had to go root this ad the whole time. So that route that we came up with that was really fun was the source of this person's pain. And that's just a perfect example of Gallywix, right? Like Gallywix, we had a ton of fun on this fight. It wasn't a letdown for us. But anyone who lives to strategize bosses, like Echo certainly does, you're going to, I mean, obviously we wish it was harder, but we still like had a good time, even outside of winning, because we got to do the fun thing. Anyone that was in that position would have had fun doing the fun thing on this boss. They were robbed of it. This boss is not fun, just like Lihivam, when you just know what to do going in, you know? It's just not challenging enough. Just so many things could have been so much more punishing. They could have increased the damage on so many things. You could have, here, you know what is true? This is true. You could have 3, 4, or 5 healed this boss, an end boss, and probably it would have been relatively the same difficulty. Isn't that insane? I don't know if that's ever been true ever. Like not even one time has that been true of an end boss. Is this the easiest mythic boss so far? Yeah, I think so. Like the only thing you could even kind of compare this to is like, I think for us it was close to Sarkareth, because like Sarkareth is kind of the same. Like, dude, if we fully killed Sarkareth before Echo started it, I bet they would have also done it in half the pulls in like sub 100 if they didn't have to do their own strategies. Because like, remember Sarkareth was like, we went live and like showed the boss was killable and then it died, and then, you know what I mean? Like, but if it had been the same, I'm pretty sure they would have also killed Sarkareth in sub 100. So this I would say is more closely related to Sark. But Emerald Nightmare is the other thing people are talking about. I think that's a little different for one reason. I think this boss is like easier than Xavius in a way. And what I mean by that is Xavius is supposed to be easy. Like I'm saying, like it's almost embarrassing that this boss was this easy. Like people forget that Mogashan Vaults, High Mall, Emerald Nightmare, the first raids of those expansions were supposed to be easy intro raids. They were not supposed to be Nighthold. They were not supposed to be Uldir. They were not supposed to be Nerebar Palace, where they now make first raids as just regular-ass raids. They're not intro raids. They're just full raids. Emerald Nightmare was not supposed to be hard, intentionally. So I still even feel like a lot of people give Xavius a lot of shit. I'm not really even sure why, because it was probably still too easy, but it was closer to what it was trying to be than this boss. Does that make sense? Like, Xavius was closer to the intended difficulty than this. So, like, this is definitely... I would say this is very similar to Sarkareth, though. Like, I'd be willing to wager that if we just fully progressed Sarkareth with no information, we would have probably killed it in around the same time it took us to kill Gallywix. Like, we progressed Gallywix. We killed Gallywix in 14 hours of progression, of, like, fully figuring it out. I think Sarkareth is close to that, and I think in both of those bosses' cases, Echo would have done it in about half the time if they were to have like woken up with Sarkareth with the entire strat from pull 1. Even then though, Sarkareth was trying to kill you more than this boss was. Like even just healing Sarkareth P1 was harder than healing anything in this fight.